Pleasure to be here today. Great crowd. Send some rain to eastern Iowa, please. We've had about 4/10 of an inch in the last 3 weeks. We just keep getting missed. It keeps going around us. It is extremely dry over there. We got about another week or two, and we're going to have some real issues. So that's why the corn price is going up. Just wanted to show you a little bit here today. This is a field in Iowa. In the fall, after harvest, a lot of material. There's just a lot of material left in that field. We want to figure out what to do with it. And how do we take this and move this from a byproduct we've got to get rid of to a co-product that has real value for growers and for feeders? Why is Monsanto interested in this? What does Monsanto have? Why do we have a stake in this game? And then this is the reason. We're talking about corn yields going up. Monsanto has publicly stated, and all the other seed companies are the same way, yields are going to go up. We've talked about doubling yields by 2030. Well, that's great. A lot of growers say, that's really great. What the hell am I going to do with all that residue? I can't hardly handle it now at 200 bushel. What am I going to do at 300, 350? So we need to look at it. We need to find a way to answer those questions for growers. Just getting to be the old guy in the room anymore, but in 1975, when I graduated from Iowa State, Iowa's average yield was 75 bushel an acre. Today, it's 175. Are we going to see that in the future? I think so, and more. This is some of the issues we deal with. The other thing that has happened to the residue is when I run my combine, and I farm in eastern Iowa too, but when I run my combine through in the 80s, I was hoping to have an ear and part of a stalk left because a lot of times the corn borers ate it up. Today, we've got a fully intact plant. We've got leaves. We've got tassels. Everything is there because of the traits that we use and because of the herbicides or the insecticides that we use, the fungicides that we use, keep that plant alive and keep it really whole until late in the season. And then we get a snow, and we don't have a chance to break that material down. It doesn't start early, and it really impacts some of our, as we go to no-till, and especially in corn and corn. So again, we talked about yields increasing. This is where Monsanto's, we're projecting with new biotech traits, new marker-assisted breeding, new conventional breeding, we're going to see yields of corn increase. Got to find uses for the corn, also got to find uses for the residue. So you look at it, 200 bushel. We've studied what is that harvest index. How much of it's grain, how much of it is residue? So we can really understand what we've got to remove from a field. And you look at this chart, basically we're looking at the percent biomass, and this is the grain yield. And you can look, it's fairly flat. Even out to 300 bushel, we're seeing about 58% is grain and about 42% is dry biomass. And that's about 3.4 bone dry tons an acre is what's available, what's out in that field. So we're seeing growers spending a lot of time and money in handling this residue. We're seeing a lot of new equipment coming out there, ways for the planter to handle it, move it out of the way, chop it in the field. We'll also see a corn rower later on from Jim Strader that handles it in the field, BT crushers. But what we thought was really interesting, and this is from our trials in eastern Iowa. On our corn and corn growers, were continuous corn, look at the number of tillage strips they had to do in the spring. The average was about 2.5 to 3, and our rotated, where we had a 50-50 rotation, rotating from soybeans to corn, a lot of them were one pass. Really, really lowering their costs. What's it cost to make a trip over the field? $12 to $15 an acre? And it's the time it takes you in the spring when you don't have that time, when you need to be running that planter. So what do we do at Monsanto really well? We take surveys. That's, and the marketing side, they do surveys all the time. So we surveyed 528 growers, and they were actively involved in farming, and they had at least 500 acres of corn in 2010. So we went out and asked them, and this is basically the Corn Belt we're looking at here. The west is Nebraska, of course. The central is Iowa, Illinois. The south is Missouri. We call that the south anyway in this trial. But looking at it, what's a typical crop rotation? A lot of corn on corn, and then multiple years of corn and soybeans. So we asked them, over the past few years, would you say that managing corn residue has become a much more serious problem, a somewhat more serious problem, no different, or a less serious problem? This is the results we got. This is what kind of a stunner for us in that central corn belt. 80% of the growers, or almost 80% of the growers, told us it was a real issue that we've got to deal with today. So we also asked them, how much does it cost you? What exactly in dollars does it take you to manage that residue? Got a lot of them at $20 or more, a lot of them at 15 to 20. The average overall was $12 an acre, about a tillage trip, to incorporate that stover or residue in the corn. So there's really, risk, uncertainty and risk in stover harvest. This is a baled field in Iowa. The reason I always include this one in my presentations is we baled this field, we raked and baled the field, took about 1.5 tons of corn residue off per acre. We removed all these bales off and hauled them away. About 3 days later, the grower calls me. He drove past, how he usually checks his fields from the pickup, and he called me. He says, hey, when are you going to bale my field? We knew we did it right then. So it can be done sustainably. But this is a field in Nebraska where the stalk shredder had gone through. You can see what the wind does to this. You guys have a different environment. Everything I'm presenting here today, the information I'm presenting is on eastern Iowa, an area with about 38 to 40 inches of rainfall a year. Compare that to your areas. I know there's a lot less in western Nebraska. So properly done, we can really add value to an acre of corn. We can actually create a second crop off that cornfield. Improperly done, we can hurt that field and have long-term consequences. So we put together a project. This started almost 6 years ago now. Looking at Deere, ADM, Deere for the equipment, looking part of it. ADM, excellent people to work with, really good on the beef nutrition side, biofuel production, they've been excellent to work with, and then Monsanto. Of course, at Monsanto, the other thing we do really well is we have to shorten everything to a three-letter, and it became the DAM project, and appropriately named sometimes. But we wanted to look at sustainable harvest, both economically sustainable and environmentally sustainable. You have to be able to do it. It has to make money. How do you transport this material? It's a huge volume of material. How do you store it? And then what type of conversion? When we started this project, we thought it was all going to be biomass. It was all going to be, we're going to make it all into ethanol. Well, it's coming, but it's slowly. We also thought, boy, this is a great way, we'll burn it in a boiler. So we took 5,000 bales down to Cedar Rapids, ground them up, fed them through a bubbling fluidized bed boiler. Geez, they burned okay. They burned at about 75, 80% the value of coal. But it's really, really hard to compete with $35 a ton coal. That's not sustainable long term. So we looked at other ways. We also looked at really managing this. How do we protect that soil? You need some material on that ground. You need some stover left. But how much do you need? And that was a lot of our emphasis. So we've got to reduce wind erosion, water erosion. We wanted to add organic matter to the soil. And there are several tools out there that can help us do that. And really, the Russell II and the Soil Conditioning Index, really, really like that. That helps us manage this and do it on a field-by-field basis. So we set up targets. We set up erosion targets at 2.5 tons an acre, and we wanted to build organic matter. It was how we wanted to set it up. A real eye-opener was, fields that are most suitable for harvest are flatter, higher yielding. That was kind of a duh moment in our study. We learned that, hey, that's what you want to what you want to do, but really look at corn yield. What surprised me the most was, this is Benton County, Iowa, just west of Cedar Rapids, where we did most of our baling. Most of those fields, at 132 bushel an acre above, we could sustainably harvest stover. These fields, on average, did between 180 and 200 bushel, all during our trial. So I always like to throw this in because people ask me, how big an area is this? How much stover can we actually take off? You look at Iowa, Illinois, Minnesota, Nebraska, Indiana, and Ohio, it's 100 million tons of material that can be taken off sustainably. And that's today. We double yields, it'll be a lot more than that. So 100 million tons is a big number. If we if we had an normal inclusion rates in cattle rations of treated corn stover, we'd utilize about 20% of that for cattle feeding, to feed every cattle in the United States. There's a lot of material out there. There's plenty for everybody's use. We just need to figure out how to handle it. So this is what we did in Cedar Rapids. 2008, 9, and 10, we went out and baled. We used round bales. We didn't know what else to do in 2008, so we went and hired a custom operator. Thank God he was patient with us, and we made a lot of mistakes the first year. We broke a lot of balers, we broke a lot of rakes, we did a lot of things wrong, but we learned, and we tried not to repeat those mistakes often, anyway. But we enrolled a lot of fields. You can see the county yield averages. In our baling rate, we got a little better a couple years, but it stayed fairly consistent. We tried to move more to square bales. We thought the square bales, I wanted to kick the round bales out after year one, but round balers run, and they run, and they run, and they run, and they don't break down. They don't have knotters that have problems. They don't have other issues that we saw with the square balers, because corn stover is not hay. If you don't take anything else away from here, it's not hay. It's a different product, and it needs to be managed differently. And so we did bale a lot of large square bales that last year, and they do handle, store well. It can be done. This is one of the features we ran into, and again, this is eastern Iowa. This is not Nebraska. But looking at rainfall, looking at average weather in 2008, I don't know if you remember 2008, but it was a late harvest. It was wet, a lot of small, frequent rains. This is the rainfall levels. And you can see less than half an inch, but there's a lot of them here. And normally it was 3 days after we'd combine a field, we'd be able to come in and start raking and baling that field. So we thought, well, 2008, it can't get any worse. Well, it did. Of course, 2009, you can see these are almost 1.5 inch rainfalls all during the early season, September, October. Hell, it was the middle of October, late November, or into November before we even started baling in that year. And then we had 2010. And what a beautiful fall that was. I mean, it was great. You could have harvested all fall. But what we came up with was an average of 19 days of harvest in the fall for corn stover. To harvest 100 million tons in 19 days, going to be really hard to do. Wanted to show you a little bit how we did it. We started out, this is the first year, we started out with just a wheel rake. We broke, I don't know how many of those teeth, I'd hate to tell you how many we broke. We left a lot in the field because we flattened a lot of tires on balers. But we did break a lot of those. We found a better way to do it the second year, but we just raked. We wanted to leave the base of that stalk intact. And the reason we wanted to leave that intact, corn senesces down in the fall, and a lot of the potassium and phosphorus is down in that base of that stalk. So if you can leave that intact, and then take the leaves, take the upper part, take the husk, we even got cobs, probably had a few ears of corn in there. But you can see nice rows across here, but a lot of material left behind. Sustainable harvest. Be a little tough on Ridgedale though, I'd imagine. But these are the balers we used. And you can see the bales we made, baling rates, to give you an idea. We thought the square baler would really outshine the round baler because it doesn't have to stop, it just continues to bale. But it does there are issues with the round baler, or the square balers. An average idea on weights and bale moistures and bale densities. The square balers are more dense. A few other things we learned. We started year one. Our custom operator had always just taken a skid loader, tractor, and loader and hauled the bales over to the edge of the field. He did 4,000 or 5,000 bales a year that way. Our staging rate went with this equipment we added from Bueller was 86 bales an hour in 2009 versus 19 bales an hour 2008. We learned some things all the way through this. We learned how to do it more efficiently. We think this industry will evolve and change and grow as we go forward. A little bit about the square bales. As you can see, that's probably a broken bale coming out because we had a lot of knotter issues. The knotters work great in the morning. We'd blow them all off, clean up everything, make it really work well, and then all of a sudden about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, this is extremely, extremely abrasive material. It is dirty, it is dusty, it's not a real good environment when you're baling corn stover bales. But we made some good bales, and we had some good equipment. We ended up piling up about almost 1,500. We also had some new equipment we tested from New Holland. New Holland's been great to work with on this also. They brought us out a rake. One thing we learned with this heavy-duty rake, we didn't break any teeth. We only broke 6 teeth on this in a whole year. Excellent, excellent equipment. But one thing we were able to harvest too much. It was almost too aggressive. You've got to manage the equipment. And again, this is our goal, to leave some material behind, make sure it's a nice sustainable harvest, but allow us to go corn on corn. You can plant into this without battling all that residue. Another thing we did, we measured a lot of bales. 10% of the bales we baled each year, we measured. We measured, we weighed, and then we probed 3 times with a Penn State 4H probe. It was a lot of work. This is some of the results from that. We wanted to understand what exactly are we taking off that ground? What are we removing from your soil, both in moisture and nutrients? You look at moisture by field. Our goals, ADM asked us year one, they said, hey, we'd like to have 12.5% moisture bales. We said, hey, Matt, no problem. Should be easy. Yeah, wrong. Well, in 2008, that was our average moisture, was 23.2. We didn't never got any bales if we had waited for 12% moisture. They never dried down the field. In 2009, we learned to manage it a little better. We tried to do some things better, but we still, 21.6, much, much higher than what our goals were on this. And then 2010, finally, we had a great fall, 13% bales. So it's going to vary by year. These are actually the field averages. Amazing the differences within a field on moisture levels. We're at in the field, near the draw, up on top of the hill, made a huge difference in the moisture levels on the bales. Also, and then again, I caution you, this is eastern Iowa. We had, there was 43 bales that we measured in field number 3.5. And we did this early. This was right at the day of harvest. I went out 11 days later. We did 149 bales that we checked in that same field for moisture. Look at the difference. There was a snow and 2 rain events. Look at how much those bales gained in moisture. We thought the round bales would really shed moisture. They don't. In eastern Iowa, they want to go to 30%. That's where they'd like to end up, sometimes 35%. So you need to manage your storage. We tarped some bales, and that worked extremely well. Fairly easily, fairly cheaply. Best thing is put them in a building if you can. Of course, that's a little more expensive. This is a key one for the growers. And what you want to understand is, what are we removing from your ground when we bale corn stover? How much nitrogen are we taking off? How much phosphorus and how much potassium are we removing from that soil? And it varied year to year. You can see how we're down a little bit here. And these are nitrogen, dry tons. This is phosphorus. And again, small amounts of phosphorus, less than 5 pounds. And this is P2O5, and then potassium. Now, potassium is not as big an issue out here in Nebraska as it is in eastern Iowa. Eastern Iowa, we have to add a lot of potassium. Very expensive. Out here, it's not as big an issue. But this is exactly what we're removing. So what's all that worth? What are we taking off that ground for that grower? These are the average values. And this is each farm. In 2009 was about $12 a bale. 2010 was less than $5 a bale. Why the huge difference? Why the big change? You can see the prices of fertilizer. This is based on the Iowa State trials, or Iowa State fertilizer prices. And look at nitrogen costs. In 2009 versus 2010, they were half in 2010. Again, P2O5, less than half. So huge changes. Those nutrient replacement costs are going to vary year to year. But again, if you take nothing else away from this today, what we averaged was about $10 a bale on a 1,200-pound round bale. It's about what the nutrient cost is going to average. Now, if fertilizer prices change dramatically, that'll, of course, will change. But it's about $10 a bale is what it's worth. We also wanted to check micronutrients. This was wanted to look at sulfur specifically, and about a pound of sulfur per dry ton. It's about where it averaged. And then we also iron, magnesium, zinc, molybdenum, looking at everything else. Very, very small amounts. So we'd fought this moisture for 3 years. We're trying to figure out a way. How do we take what we've got? Instead of trying to make this stover fit 12.5% moisture, how do we use wet stover? How do we use wet residue out of the field? Or wetter, anyway, I should say. So we did a trial last year. This is in Rochester, Indiana. And he seeded this with annual rye about the end of August, early September, with a cover crop. It really looks great. It really did well. What this also did for us was we were able to sustainably remove twice as much stover from that field. And he was able to use a lot of that. Manure application, that was one of the reasons he did this, was because it increased the manure application on that field. But what a great way to do a sustainable harvest with a cover crop. We think this has got tremendous future. It's really going to change the economics of stover harvest. And Jim will talk more about this later. This is just a picture of the combine that we used in this. It was a specially modified combine that has, and Jim Strader can explain this a lot better than I can, but it has chopper heads. Basically, it harvests corn like a normal combine, brings it down through, pops the ear off, but it chops the stalk as it goes down through. Takes it back, takes that stalk onto a conveyor belt, blows it through a little tube, and then drops it onto a conveyor belt and puts it all in the middle. And then the mog, or the material other than grain that comes out the back of the combine, the husk and cobs, drops on top of it. Why is this such a big deal? Number one, it saves us a trip through the field. We didn't have to rake. Number two, and the really big deal, is we didn't have as much ash in that windrow. And really, really clean material. And the best thing about it, you can shut it off. You don't want it, you shut it off, and you don't need to do it. It doesn't slow down the harvest. It doesn't slow down the combine. So we think it's a really innovative tool. On this cover crop ground, we were able to go out and then, actually, this is what it looked like after combining. Probably notice a little white on top of the windrow. That's calcium hydroxide that we placed right on the windrow. Now, a lot of this, when you're combining 20, 22, 24% grain, normally that stover is going to be double that out the back of the combine. You're going to be 40 plus. This stuff was running between 40 and 50%. We just took the calcium hydroxide, took a fertilizer cart, and dumped it right on top of it. And then here we come with a chopper. The process, it was reacting inside this. We were seeing a change in color in the material. What we loved about this, everybody's in a cab. We're not handling bales. We're not, there's definitely a place for corn stover bales. There's always going to be here. This is just another alternative we looked at in a way to really handle wet corn stover out of the field and do it in a large scale. Is this perfect? No. Learn a lot. We'll learn a lot more this fall. But handle it just like silage. Basically compact it. This grower has now told us he's not going to chop any silage this fall. He said, why would I chop silage when I can manage the amount of corn that's going into my ration by utilizing corn stover? And that's what it looks like. So, just a quick summary. Properly done, corn stover harvest can improve the value of an acre of corn. That's our goal at Monsanto, is to really add value, let that residue become a co-product, not a byproduct we've got to get rid of. It requires management. We need to do it sustainably. We understand what our most valuable resource is, that land. We've got to protect that. And then nutrient costs, they average about $10 a bale.
What's the average weight of your bale then?
1,200 pounds. Yeah, we took this on a round bale average. We had round bales that weighed anywhere from 1,500 pounds to 900 pounds. But average was about 12. What I'm giving you today is a lot of averages. There's a tremendous amount of variation within that. Harvesting dry stover can be challenging. Can we do it all? Can we do all 100 million tons with bales? I don't know. But that's going to be problematic. I think we need other ways to handle this. But I think we've got a resource here that's extremely, and we need to find a way to handle it. There's new equipment coming forward. There's a lot of new techniques coming that are going to be utilized in handling it. And then lower cost, high volume bulk harvests are possible.